A deadly crime wave has erupted in Milwaukee. The city has had at least 84 so far this year, more than double last year's rate.
So breaking here at 4, police looking for the person who gunned down a 15-year-old boy near a bus stop in the middle of the afternoon.
Investigators have spent months piecing together a string of actions and reactions they believe started in the fall of 2020.
In a significant crackdown on gang activity, law enforcement authorities have made a major bust associated with some Milwaukee street gangs. Apparently, these guys are facing a range of serious charges. The story goes, there was a bust of 30 people allegedly part of the Milwaukee street gang Wild 100s. Shark Gang, or SNG, has serious charges against them like mail fraud, M for hire, gun-related crimes, drug tea, and having machine guns. Talk about a complex criminal operation involving all kinds of illegal stuff.
Updating breaking news from this morning, an FBI raid at a Milwaukee home is connected to a federal fraud and for hire investigation.
The bust was a big deal, obviously, in the ongoing fight against gang crime in Milwaukee. It's the result of an investigation that may have messed with a network involved in all sorts of crimes. The unsealing of the charges against 27 of the defendants show that arrests have been made, while charges against 3 others remain sealed until they're caught. This is a major move towards taking on gang activity and reducing violence in Milwaukee. If they're found guilty, they could face serious sentences, which might make others think twice before joining similar criminal activities.
The indictment accuses some of using millions of dollars from fake pandemic unemployment assistance applications to buy guns, drugs, and even kill a man for money.
Milwaukee has a serious problem with street gangs involved in selling illegal drugs, as at way back in 2008, there were around 50 different gangs operating in the area with over 1,000 members in total. The Milwaukee Police Department has been working hard for so long to tackle this issue. In early 2008, some major investigations into these gangs wrapped up and led to the indictments of 100 gang members.
You telling me my son may be dying?
No, I said he's been shot.
Milwaukee is split into 2 main areas, the north side and the south side. A lot of these gangs are named after the streets they grew up on, like Burleigh, Hampton, and Center Street. The city is dealing with all sorts of crimes, including lots of guns and petty thefts like car theft. Drug is also a major issue as gangs get girlfriends and family to help move their products. Milwaukee's police estimate about 50 gangs with over 1,000 members are active in the city, making it a hotspot for chaos. On top of everything else, Milwaukee's also dealing with the scary problem of the city ranks high in the US for the number of victims found and pimps busted. From 2013 to 2016, a shocking 340 people aged 25 and under were confirmed victims of in the city. Even with efforts to stop these rings, the problem is still going strong. There's also a big spike in car thefts, especially when it comes to Kia and Hyundai cars. This trend blew up thanks to a TikTok challenge where people showed how easy it is to swipe these cars using a phone charger. The Kia Boys, a group of teenage guys, have been going nuts in the city, stealing cars just for the thrill and posting their escapades online. This city's got a lot going on, from gun and to car theft and rundown buildings. These problems have been around for a while and are tied to long-standing issues like segregation and systemic challenges. The education system is not making things much better. Black students face suspension rates that are double the national average, which pushes a lot of young people towards the streets and gangs to find a sense of belonging. Milwaukee's history has some serious dark parts, including being the home of one of America's most infamous serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer. 17 people between 1978 and 1991, and his creepy story still lingers in the city even now. Crime is clearly not new to this city. All evidence suggests that Hispanic street gangs are the main players when it comes to selling powder coke, and a smaller amount of crack coke on the south side. These gangs, such as the Latin Kings, Mexican Posse, and Spanish Cobras, are very well organized with clear hierarchies and set rules. Their strong structure means members are less likely to talk to the police about other gang members, even if they're from rival gangs. No snitching over here, it costs too much to name drop. A lot of these gang members are first or second generation immigrants with family ties in Mexico. They're worried about retaliation against their families back home, which keeps them loyal to the gang and less likely to help law enforcement. Even though it's tough to get cooperation from these gang members, there have been successful investigations that have managed to take down some Hispanic gang members who were involved in drug dealing on Milwaukee's south side. On the north side of Milwaukee, most of the retail drug sales are controlled by African American street gangs. These gangs mainly deal in coke and they often convert powder coke into crack in stash houses in larger quantities. The enterprise then expanded, naturally, as most profitable businesses do. They then also started getting involved in selling MDMA. The two main African-American gangs running the scene in the area are the Gangster Disciples and Vice Lords, which have ties to Chicago gangs with the same names. But there are also plenty of smaller local gangs that operate based on where their members grew up or currently live. These gangs usually don't have a strict structure and are more loosely organized. Word on the street is when these gang members get arrested, they tend to be more open to working with law enforcement compared to Hispanic street gangs. This cooperation can help police get more information about other gang members and their activities. What's that saying again? The enemy of my enemy? Or maybe just self-preservation? Both the Hispanic and African American street gangs at some point figured they'd get more creative in how they operate by using females and young people to carry out drug tea and other illegal activities. In the past, women were mostly involved in selling drugs at the retail level and laundering money by buying things like cars and houses in their names. But now they're moving up to disturbing larger quantities of drugs, both mid-level and wholesale. These guys have been pulling in younger people, including middle school and high school students, to work for them. These students are being used to sell drugs, keep watch for gang activities, and even take part in crimes like shootings, carjackings, and robberies. This shift is concerning because it brings more young people into dangerous situations and further fuels gang activity in the city. The Asian street gangs are primarily involved in selling high-potency and MDMA, with smaller amounts of powder coke also in the mix. The gangs, mostly made up of Vietnamese, Laotian, and Hmong members, get their high-potency weed and MDMA from Asian teas located in Canada and along the west coast of the US. When it comes to powder coke, these gangs source it from Asian teas based in cities like San Diego, Fresno, and Sacramento, California. The gangs are closely connected to larger national-level Asian drug tea organizations, forming tight-knit groups. They tend to establish relationships and build trust before they begin working with people outside their immediate circle, which makes it challenging for outsiders to penetrate their operations. Despite their limited reach in the overall market compared to other groups, their connections to bigger networks and preference for high-quality products make them an important part of the drug trade in the area. There's also the outlaw motorcycle tough guys. They also own turf. They are also involved in distributing a range of illicit drugs, including coke and but these guys don't stop there. These guys don't just stop at drug tea, they're also engaged in various other criminal activities such as burglary, fraud, money laundering, running S-work operations, robbery, and violating weapons laws. So more streams of income. It'd be a solid business plan if they weren't selling illegal drugs, carrying people and tea. The Outlaws Motorcycle Club is the biggest and most active OMG in the area. They're part of a nationwide network and are structured with a clear chain of command, including positions like president, vice president, and other officers. The organized hierarchy allows them to coordinate their activities and maintain control over their operations. Their involvement in multiple forms of crime makes them a significant threat to public safety in the region. Members of drug tea organizations, criminal groups, and street gangs use various communication methods to run their drug operations. Commonly used devices include contracted cell phones, two-way direct connect phones. At some point, it used to be a whole lot of Blackberries, but the use of disposable communication tools seems wise. Street gang members and other drug dealers are increasingly using prepaid cell phones due to their low cost and relative anonymity, allowing them to dispose of the phones frequently and avoid law enforcement tracking. For instance, the leader of an African-American street gang on the north side of Milwaukee used over 20 different cell phones to coordinate the gang's drug operations. Most of these were prepaid phones that the leader regularly discarded and replaced. In addition to prepaid phones, some gang members use social networking sites like MySpace and BLNK, as well as personal web pages to communicate and show off their gang membership and activities. These platforms offer a way to connect and organize with others while sharing information about their gang-related endeavors. These legal proceedings also show how important it is for local and federal law enforcement to team up to tackle gang crime. Such partnerships are crucial for keeping communities safe. The charges against these gang members outline a bunch of different crimes, from defrauding the Department of Labor by filing fake claims for benefits to M for hire and various firearms and drug crimes. These illegal activities include scamming federal programs meant to help people affected by the pandemic and unemployment issues.
Now, millions of people are starting to get a taste of the helpless feeling of job loss. In 10 weeks, 40.7 million Americans filed jobless claims.
During COVID, the unemployment rate rose dramatically. It reached a peak of 13% in the second quarter before easing back to 6.7% by the fourth quarter of 2020. This significant increase was caused by businesses shutting down or suspending operations, leading to a record number of temporary layoffs and preventing many people from seeking work. For the first 2 months of 2020, the US was still in the midst of a decade-long economic expansion, marking the longest on record. However, millions of jobs were lost as the pandemic unfolded. Civilian employment, as tracked by the Current Population Survey (CPS), dropped by 21 million from the fourth quarter of 2019 to the second quarter of 2020. During this time, the unemployment rate more than tripled from 3.6% to 13%, representing the highest quarterly average unemployment rate in the history of the CPS. The COVID-19 pandemic had a substantial impact on employment in Milwaukee, reflecting similar trends seen across the country. Over one-third, 37% of Milwaukee's labor force filed for unemployment benefits in the first 11 months of the pandemic from March 2020 through January 2021. The economic fallout was not evenly distributed. Workers in black neighborhoods were the hardest hit, with about 45% filing unemployment claims. This is significantly higher than the 30% in Hispanic or Latino neighborhoods and 25% in white neighborhoods. Low-wage workers were particularly vulnerable. Over 50,000 workers who filed for unemployment benefits had annual reported wages of $25,000 or less in 2019. This was especially evident in black neighborhoods where 50% of workers who filed claims were in this wage bracket. Many workers experienced extended periods of unemployment. Around 47% of Milwaukee workers with unemployment claims, about 46,800 workers, filed at least 3 months of weekly claims. Additionally, over 26,000 workers filed for unemployment benefits for at least 6 months. The federal government introduced several programs to support those affected by unemployment and economic challenges. These programs were designed to help individuals facing job loss or reduced income due to the pandemic's impact on the economy. The Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation (FPUC) program offered an extra $600 a week on top of regular unemployment benefits to help out those who couldn't work because of COVID-19. This extra cash was there to help folks who had lost income due to the pandemic. The program got extended a few times before it ended on September 6, 2021. Pandemic Unemployment Assistance (PUA) was a big deal because it extended unemployment benefits to people who usually wouldn't qualify, like self-employed workers, freelancers, gig workers, and part-timers who were impacted by the pandemic. It offered up to 39 weeks of support, which later got extended to 50 weeks. PUA was crucial for helping people who fell outside the usual unemployment system. Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation (PEUC) was set up to help people who had used up their state's regular unemployment benefits. It gave them an extra 13 weeks of support at first, and then it was extended to 24 weeks for those who were still out of work because of the pandemic. This was to make sure folks had more time to get back on their feet. These programs were a lifeline for people and families facing tough times because of the pandemic. They added to the regular unemployment benefits and extended support to those who wouldn't usually qualify, helping ease the financial blow from the COVID-19 crisis. The defendants are accused of conspiring to scam the Department of Labor through fake applications for benefits under programs like the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. The stolen money was then allegedly used to buy guns, drugs, jewelry, vacations, and even to pay for M for Hire. The indictment also reveals a disturbing M for Hire scheme where 2 defendants used interstate communication to plan a hit on someone for cash. On top of that, gun-related offenses include selling drugs to felons, dealing with machine guns, and possessing firearms when they weren't supposed to. The team-up between different law enforcement agencies like the FBI, ATF, DOL, OIG, and Milwaukee PD shows how serious they are about taking down this criminal group. By working together on arrests and search warrants, they're putting up a united front to combat organized crime and make sure those responsible are held accountable. The bust and arrests play a big role in stopping gang-related crime and keeping Milwaukee safer. It's like something out of a movie, but it's definitely real and impacting communities across the country. Imagine walking through a neighborhood where local businesses are struggling, houses are run down, and there's an air of tension. That's the impact gangs can have on economic development. Look at El Salvador. Areas under gang control suffer economically with fewer job opportunities and less money flowing in. This is not just a local problem, it's a national one too. Gang activity siphons cash away from legitimate businesses, drops property values, and racks up costs for law enforcement and the courts. It's a vicious cycle that drains resources. But it's not just about the money, it's about people's lives. Gang is both a public safety and a public health crisis. We're talking injuries, lost lives, and trauma that lingers long after the chaos subsides. Now let's take a closer look at Milwaukee. Since the pandemic has spiked, with reaching concerning levels. It's a mix of heartache, frustration, and the additional stress the pandemic added. Milwaukee's gangs have ties to major players in Chicago and have been connected to numerous shootings and killings. It's a tough problem to tackle, but it's been part of the American story for centuries. Gangs have always been around, often seen as the bad guys, but they're also a part of the cultural landscape. This operation shows how, working together, local and federal law enforcement can break down complex criminal networks. As the legal process unfolds, the city hopes justice will be served and communities that have long suffered from gang violence can find some relief. While these arrests are a win, authorities need to keep up the fight against gang activity to help Milwaukee move towards a safer future. The road ahead is tough, but with continued collaboration, law enforcement can bring lasting change and make the city a better place for everyone. This operation should serve as motivation for further efforts to combat organized crime and create peace in affected neighborhoods.